On today's Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to hear from Locked On Syracuse host Jackson Holzer, who will give us the lowdown on quarterback Kyle McCord and some other Orangemen draft prospects Giant fans might want to keep an eye on. That's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credentialed member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, I want to welcome in my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. And on today's program, I promised you guys I would start inviting Locked On college hosts onto the show to talk about their draft prospects. So up first, we're going to start locally. Virtually locally. We're going to keep it in the New York area with the Syracuse Orangemen. And joining me for the program is Jackson Holzer. He is the host of Locked On Syracuse. Jackson, thanks so much for joining me.
Of course, anytime.
All right, Jackson, we got a lot to talk about. Syracuse has a quarterback we need to talk about. This quarterback has been mentioned as a possibility, not a definite possibility, but nonetheless, we got to talk quarterbacks because the Giants need their quarterback of the future. So let's talk a little bit about Kyle McCord. Give us an overview, if you will, on Kyle McCord as far as the scouting report goes.
So we can go with the good first. He's big, he's strong, he's got a good arm, and he's very accurate. And he's also very mentally tough. He had maybe the worst game of his entire life. And I'm not exaggerating this, against Pitt earlier this year where he threw 5 interceptions. It was an awful game. I mean, this is a kid who dominated as a child. He was a 5-star high school recruit. He goes to Ohio State. And even though he maybe was up and down at Ohio State, he never had a game quite like the Pitt game, which was a complete disaster. And the response he had the rest of the season, I think he threw 1 interception the rest of the way in like 6 more games. He threw 15 touchdowns in that span. He was sensational. I mean, he beat Cam Ward head-to-head inside the Dome in the final week of the regular season. That eliminated Miami from the college football playoff. And he was also sensational in the bowl game against Washington State. So I really like Kyle McCord, and I think he can be an NFL starting caliber quarterback. Now, the weakness on him is he's not the most mobile quarterback in the world. And I think that ultimately is what hurts his ceiling a little bit. If he had a little bit more mobility, this is someone who we'd be talking about as a top 5 pick.
All right. When you say he doesn't have a whole lot of mobility, does he at least have enough mobility to get out of trouble? Or are you talking in terms of not enough mobility to run RPOs and designed runs?
Well, Syracuse last year ran a lot of RPOs, but it's not like Kyle McCord would be the one doing the running. It would either be LeQuint Allen or he would throw the quick slant. So he can escape the pocket, but aside from that, you'll see every once in a while he has like some highlight plays out there of him running for a lot of yards. He had a helicopter run similar to John Elway against Stanford earlier this year. I'm not joking. You can go look it up. He flipped it in the end zone like he was John Elway in the Super Bowl. That was pretty cool, and they lost that game, by the way. But he's not someone who you're going to take and say, all right, go be superhuman when you're running the football.
In terms of the offense that Syracuse runs, where, when you look at the types of throws they ask him to make, is there a specific bracket, if you will, that they keep him in, or is he capable of making all the throws?
All of them. They asked him to do literally everything throwing the football. I think he led the nation in passing attempts, led the nation in passing yards, and I think that also coincides with leading the nation in completions. whether it's a check down to LeQuint Allen, whether it's a quick slant to Jackson Meeks, going over the middle to Oronde Gadsen, or just throwing it up and taking the top off the defense, he could do that too. And no matter what, he was incredibly accurate. And I would say the best throw in his arsenal is the back shoulder fade. He is sensational at throwing guys open. See, there's a difference between throwing to a guy is open and throwing to a guy who's not open, but making him open. And that's what you're doing with a back shoulder throw. And he was unbelievable at it this season. Every time he threw a back shoulder, it was money. It was like, yep, that's a touchdown. Yep, that's a first down. That's a completion. Doesn't matter the receiver. It's going to be right in his breadbasket. If it didn't work, it's probably because the receiver dropped it.
All right. Now, I think recently Syracuse had their pro day, if I'm not mistaken. What did he show that maybe people, opened a few eyes, or how did that work out for him?
I think he was exactly the same way as what he showed throughout the entire season. Big kid, incredibly accurate, and could make all the throws in the world.
All right. And, if getting to the next level, obviously it sounds like he's going to be a developmental project, but what does he need to really hone in on at the next level before you can talk about him as a potential starter?
So that's a really good question. A lot of times with Syracuse, he would make one read. It was, hey, you're going to get the ball and you're going to throw it in 2 seconds or less, which is really good. I mean, that's the most ideal. Getting rid of the ball fast eliminates the majority of your problems on offense, especially in the NFL. We always like to crap on the offensive line, and then you look at the quarterback, like Caleb Williams, for example, and he's holding on the ball for like 4 or 5 seconds. You just can't do that in the National Football League. They're too good, right? So Kyle McCord is really good at getting rid of the ball fast, but at the same time, it was usually one read, it's out. And at times he can get in trouble when he's staring down a wide receiver. You can maybe get away with that in college, especially when you have a better wide receiver. But in the NFL, I don't care that you have Malik Neighbors. Those are NFL corners on the other side. If you stare them down, they're going to pick you off. So making multiple reads in a short amount of time, I think, is also where he could develop.
Now, Jackson, I don't know how familiar you are with the Giants offense, but, based on whatever you know about it, they like to do a lot of underneath throws, get the ball in the hands of the playmakers, let them pick up the chunk yardage. There's some deep shots that they want to take that they haven't really been able to take, though. How do you see Kyle McCord potentially fitting into what the Giants do?
Well, I am a Jets fan, by the way, but I do watch the Giants a little bit. How would he work with them? As he's the opposite almost of Daniel Jones, because Daniel Jones was someone who was a very mobile quarterback, and you wanted to take advantage of his legs and get him moving. With Kyle McCord, he's a statue almost in the pocket. I mean, that's a little bit maybe disrespectful, but the point is that he is a pocket passing type of quarterback. So ideally, quick throws, 2.5 seconds or less, get rid of the ball.
And then, when you look at him, the intangibles, what are some of the things that you like about him intangible, from the intangible aspect, leadership, personality? And the big question is, how would he fit in the New York market where everything is magnified?
That's always the big question, how you're going to handle the New York market. It's, people will say it's overblown. It's not. It's not. I mean, you could strike out in one at bat in the first year of a $715 million contract or whatever, and people will go absolutely nuts. I mean, here's what I could say about Kyle McCord and his leadership, though. He completely changed Syracuse football for the better. Syracuse football before him, and also it goes with Fran Brown as well, their new head coach a year ago. They hadn't been good for like 20, 25 years. And even when they were good, the Eric Dungy years, still, it didn't feel the same way. He comes to Syracuse and quite literally finished top 10 in the Heisman voting. I don't think that's happened in Syracuse for more than 20, 25 years. He completely changed the locker room, completely changed the culture. He was a leader on and off the field. So he's someone who I think he's got the right mindset. It's all about now, does he actually have the ability to be a starting NFL quarterback?
And do you think he does?
I think he does. I think he absolutely could be an NFL starting quarterback, but it's what I led off with at the top. What limits him is that lack of mobility. And that's ultimately, I think, why we're not discussing him as a top 5 pick in the draft. If you draft Kyle McCord and he becomes an NFL starting quarterback, great. But does he help you accomplish the ultimate goal? Because the ultimate goal is to win the Super Bowl. And it's very difficult nowadays to win a Super Bowl without a very special quarterback. I'm not sure if Kyle McCord really has that type of ceiling where he could literally carry you to a Super Bowl.
Okay, so that being said, if you had to take a guess as to where he might be drafted, what round, what are you thinking?
I think he's going to be a day 2 pick. I don't know exactly when. I would say anywhere between 50 and 90.
Okay. Hey, Giant fans, imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person, and getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever before to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time Picks Curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I just checked Game Time before I logged on here, and there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. And they offer super deals and the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find seats in the same section and row for less elsewhere. With seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your first purchase. That's promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, to get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, we're speaking with Jackson Holzer. He is the host of On Syracuse. And now, Jackson, let's talk about some other Orangemen draft prospects. And there's 2 in particular I want to ask you about in this section, both of whom were named top 5 at their positions by Mel Kiper of ESPN, and both of whom happen to play positions that the Giants could probably use a little bit more depth in. And those 2 are a tight end, Oronde Gadsen II, and running back, LeQuint Allen. So let's start with Gadsden. Give us a scouting report on him, please.
Sure. He is a receiving tight end. Your prototypical, he's a tight end? You sure? Or is he a wide receiver? Which one? Take your pick. But I think he can be really good. He's incredibly athletic, great hands, excellent route runner, got better over the course of his college career in his pass protection, or in his run blocking, excuse me, I should say that. 2-time All-American as well, certainly does not hurt. Missed 2023 with a foot injury. I like him. I think he could be maybe the best player in the Syracuse draft class at the NFL level.
Interesting. But you said he's more of a receiver, so you wouldn't really ask him much in the terms of blocking?
That's, I think, the number one thing that every tight end struggles with when they make that jump from college to the NFL is their run blocking. It's the same thing with running backs. Are they good in pass protection or are they not? Because most of the time in college, they're not really asked to do that all that much because, well, they were really good in college, so they're not really being asked to do it. They're running the football more often than not. Similar deal with Oronde Gadsen, but he got better. And I think with better coaching at the NFL level as well, he'll only improve in his run blocking. Great route runner. He could be a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses. He's one of those players where you put a linebacker on him, he's not going to be able to hang with him. He's too fast. You put a corner on him, Oronde's too big. He's going to just box you out. So I like him. I think he's going to be a nightmare at the NFL level.
Do you think he's potentially a 1st-round pick, or do you think maybe a 2nd round?
I think he'll go in the 2nd round. Also, it's hard for tight ends to go in the first round in general. They're not the most valuable position in the draft. The draft is mostly first round. I mean, unless you're special at another position, it's the premium ones are going to go. It's your quarterbacks, it's your offensive linemen, it's your defensive linemen, it's your corners, your receivers, and then those other positions kind of get overlooked. And that's kind of where I see Oronde Gadsen, because he's not special enough of a tight end prospect where you're like, yeah, you got to take him no matter what, right? You have to do it. But he is really good, and I could see him very easily going in round 2.
Is he a good red zone threat? Is that
Oh,
how
yeah.
you used him a lot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Red zone. He can be used all over the field, but especially in the red zone, it's like what I said, matchup nightmare. If you put a corner on him, well, they can run that back shoulder fade with Kyle McCord. You're not going to stop it. Too bad. If you put a linebacker on him, well, he's going to go over the middle on you. You could watch the very end of the Georgia Tech game, and he did exactly that. He scored the game-winning touchdown. It was midway through the 4th. Syracuse almost blew that game, by the way, but he basically scored the dagger touchdown midway through the 4th on a post route. I believe it was on a linebacker where McCord just found him open in the end zone. He's just right there.
Okay, interesting. Sounds like a good prospect, but the Giants right now, tight end probably not a high need for them, although maybe down the line. So before we move off of Gadsden, where does he need to maybe bring up his game a little bit more to be successful at the NFL level?
I think he needs to get bigger, put on some more weight. I mean, it's the NFL. Pretty much everyone needs to put on more weight, especially going from college. And then it's the run blocking. Because if you want to succeed at the NFL level, you're going to have to be a very, very special receiving tight end in order to last. I mean, we're talking like Jimmy Graham here. That's how good you need to be. Because other than that, you could be a great receiving tight end in college, but if you go to the NFL and all of a sudden you're not getting open like you used to, not saying it's going to happen with Oronde, what value do you have? You're not going to last very long, right? So he needs to improve his blocking, which I think he will. And then he also needs to put on some more weight, which will help him block at the next level.
All right, now let's switch over to LeQuint Allen, running back. Now, this is a loaded running back class in this draft class this year. Tell us about Allen, what he brings to the table, and where his strengths are.
He's good. He's good. I love LeQuint Allen. When he announced that he was going to the NFL draft, I was obviously happy for him. But selfishly, I was really bummed. I wanted him back at Syracuse next year. I'm not going to sit here and say he's Marshall Faulk, because, I mean, there's one Marshall Faulk out there. There's one Christian McCaffrey out there, because he's not. But if you watch him in college, he was almost like the college version of that. He can run between the tackles. He can run outside. And he is excellent at catching the football. He's probably the best receiving back in the entire draft class. And I don't even think it's particularly close. So he is an all-around running back, and I think he is potentially a steal in this draft because I don't think he's going to go very high. I think best case, he goes round 3. And worst case, I don't see him going undrafted, but could easily be a day 3 pick. Round 5, you're sitting there and you're like, we need a running back, cheap rookie deal, could give us a few years of production. Take LeQuint Allen. He's going to be right there for you.
Interesting. Now, is he more of a slash type runner? Is he more between the tackles? How would you describe his running style?
I think he is best outside the tackles, but he has gotten better over the years at running in between the tackles. And to prove my point on that, he was money in goal line situations. It's not like he's the biggest dude in the world. Okay, this is not Brandon Jacobs running through the middle of the field here, okay, to use a giant for you all. But when he gets that ball first and goal from the 1 or 2 yard line, I don't know if he got stopped. I watched every Syracuse game this year. That's my job. I watched every LeQuint Allen run. I watched him near the goal line, and he did not get stopped. Now, it's different when he's running in between the tackles in the open field and there's 70 yards to go. But when it was in that short yardage situation, when you absolutely had to have it, he got it much more often than not.
What about pass pro? How does he do with that?
Really good. Really, really good. And that should help his value because I wish I had an example for you, but there were a number of moments during the year where you would see Kyle McCord make this awesome throw, and then you watch the replay, and there's LeQuint Allen. He is the reason it all happened because he would pick up some defensive tackle and chip him just to give McCord enough time because he beat one of our offensive linemen, or here comes a linebacker off the edge, and it just doesn't matter because LeQuint Allen is right there. So I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily talk about his pass protection. It's more like you only talk about a guy's pass protection when it's not good and you need to improve it. With the sake of LeQuint Allen, I mean, everyone needs to improve no matter what. But he is about as polished of a prospect as you're going to see at the running back position. He could run between the tackles. He can run outside the tackles. You want him to catch passes? That's fine. He might have just led the nation among running backs in catches this season. You want him to pick up a blitz? He can pick up a blitz for you, no problem.
All right. So of the three prospects we've discussed, McCord, Gadsden, and Allen, who offers the most value, do you think?
Usually you would say quarterback, but I don't think Kyle McCord is the best of the three in terms of prospects. I think it's Gadsden. I think Gadsden probably has the highest ceiling because if he puts on more weight and he's again a matchup nightmare like he was in college, this is a tight end that could have 800 to 1,000 yards consistently over the next 5 to 10 years. If he develops into the guy I think he can. Whereas with Kyle McCord, I think his ceiling is NFL starter. Like average NFL starting quarterback, which is really good. It's valuable, but do you win it's hard to win a Super Bowl that way with an average NFL starter. And then you have LeQuint Allen, and it's the classic running back thing, right? Unless you're Saquon Barkley, sorry, Giants fans, they're never going to really provide as much value as you would want.
We're speaking with Jackson Holzer. He is the host of Locked On Syracuse. And Jackson, is there anybody else that we haven't talked about from the Orangemen entering the draft that we should be paying a little bit more attention to, in your opinion?
Well, do you like pass rushers?
Absolutely.
Who doesn't want pass rushers, right? Well, Syracuse does have one big one in this draft. It is Fidel Diggs. They got him from Texas A&M in the transfer portal, and it was one of those moves where they got him, and I said, wow, I can't believe they actually got someone who was really good in the SEC, not just like like a reject from the SEC. Like, no, really good SEC player goes into the portal and picks Syracuse football. And I think he lived up to the hype. He had over 7 sacks this year. He got more of an opportunity than maybe at a school like Texas A&M. He was, in my opinion, one of the 2 to 3 best players on Syracuse's defense. And unlike those other 2 players, maybe, he's probably the best in terms of how he could fit at the NFL level, coming off the edge. I don't know if he's ever going to be a big sack guy at the NFL level, because I think he needs to become a more refined pass rusher. But could he be a good run stuffer from the edge? I think so, 100%. He's got good size. He's like 6'5", 260 already. So I think that's another day 3 pick, but one that could provide some value for you, especially over the next few years.
Does he play with his hand in the dirt, or is he a 2-point stance guy?
Both. Syracuse used him in so many different ways. They, at times, would move him to middle linebacker. Like, I'm not joking. They just would, because Marlo Wax, who's another NFL draft prospect for Syracuse, he had an injury at the beginning of the season. He missed like 6 games. And they would move Fidel Diggs to linebacker to cover it up at times. And he made some great plays, particularly in the Georgia Tech game in week 2, where that was when they first made the adjustment, moving Fidel Diggs to linebacker, and he really excelled. Now, the issue is at the NFL level, if they move him to linebacker, I'm not so sure he's going to be able to cover anyone. So I would keep him as an edge rusher.
with Syracuse, you said that they play mixed fronts, so they're not strictly a 3-4 or 4-3. Is that correct?
They usually will have three. Yeah, but yeah, you're pretty much right. You're right on that. I mean, they would rotate in and out with their defensive linemen and their linebackers. Some of it was due to injury, but the point is with Fidel Diggs is that he would move all across the field. He was. I want to amend my statement. I think he was their best defender. So they had to use him in so many different ways. The issue is at the NFL level, you kind of need to pick one that you're really good at, which is for him, the edge rusher, because unless you're Travis Hunter, who the Giants may very well take at number 3, I don't even know if Travis Hunter is going to be able to play two positions at the NFL level. So you're going to now ask Fidel Diggs to do that? You're going to want him. I think he's more of an edge rusher, though, at the NFL level. Whether you want to play him 3-4 or 4-3, I don't think it really matters.
They just could use more pass rushers, that's for sure, for the Giants.
No, has anyone ever said we're good on pass rusher?
No.
Even the teams with like 8 of them will say, you know what?
You can never have too many.
Well, we'll take another one. Why not?
Yeah.
Because we're going to go – the New York Giants, sorry, Giants fans, you're going to have to deal with Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels for the next 5-10 years minimum. You can never have enough pass rushers. All hands on deck to stop those guys.
Yeah, that's what former GM Ernie Accorsi always used to say. All right, Jackson, are there any more prospects from Syracuse that we should be paying attention to?
Syracuse, for the very first time, has a good bit of NFL draft prospects. They could very easily have 4 or 5 players drafted, which hasn't happened in quite a while. That being said, aside from the big 3, and maybe Fidel Diggs, I don't envision any of them really going high. In fact, I think the majority of them will go undrafted. Marlowe Wax is interesting at middle linebacker. I think he's more of a round 7 camp invite type of player. Clarence Lewis is at corner. I don't love how he projects at the NFL level. He was pretty good in college, but if you're a corner and you're only pretty good at the college level, I'm not very confident in your ability to now cover NFL wide receivers. Sorry, Clarence Lewis. No disrespect. You were a great Syracuse football player. Loved having you this year from Notre Dame. Justin Barron is an interesting one because there might be a little bit more upside there because he switches from safety to linebacker. He goes back and forth. Like your poor man's Isaiah Simmons. But at the same time, if he can make that transition to linebacker successfully, you don't really know what you have. But it's like a mystery box. It could very well be a really good linebacker that you get there. There's also a tackle offense, Savion Washington. Good player, but again, late in day 3 if he gets drafted at all.
Okay, so it sounds like we hit on the big 3.
The big ones, the big 3 are McCord, Gadsden, Allen, and then there's that 4th, and it's Fidel Diggs. I'm very curious to see where Fidel Diggs goes in the draft.
All right. Well, we'll see if the Giants pick up any of them in this draft class. Certainly, those are all names that have been linked in mock drafts to the Giants at some point or another. So it's going to be very fun to see where they go. As with any of the prospects, where did the team, how does the team view its needs and how do they view these prospects? Jackson, I want to thank you so much for coming on with me to talk Syracuse. He is Jackson Holzer. You can find his work over on On Syracuse. So please check out all of our college hosts because their information this time of year especially is so valuable. We're going to have more of our college hosts on the Locked On Giants podcast. Also coming up on the Locked On Giants podcast this week, I'm going to have Jordan Reed of ESPN to talk draft. So plenty of draft content coming your way. For Jackson Holzer, I'm Patricia Traina. Giant fans, thank you so much for joining us, spending part of your day with us, and we will see you again tomorrow.